Good. There we go. Um, of course, here at EAN, we have a free weekly podcast. We have our Astro Library, our multimedia course, in addition to webinars such as these. Here is the Astro Library in the 3 different sections that it's available with a dozen years of materials that we've collected by Kim Marie and other evolutionary astrologers over the years. You can subscribe for 1 month, 6 months, 12 months, or do a monthly recurring that you can cancel at any time. Here's our multimedia course, the 3 segments that we have, and these segments come with binders, DVDs. Segments 1 and 2 come with Jeffrey Wolf Green's transcript of the original or the first school he ever taught on evolutionary astrology. And of course, you get access to all kinds of archived audio files and video files, such as these. Segments 1 and 2 have classes every month. And segment 1 is now available completely online if you don't want to carry anything around and just have it available from any internet-friendly device wherever you may travel or go. And with a little bit less price because it is digital only. And so again, tonight's subject matter is Saturn in Sagittarius, houses 5 through 8. Here are the dates that Saturn is in Sag very quickly. As you can see, it is just 3 months shy of a 3-year transit. It will retrograde back into Scorpio here June through September, but otherwise it is a full 3 years in Sagittarius. Saturn averages about 2.5 years through a sign, but sometimes it's a little more, a little less. Here's the 3 retrogrades that we're going to have during Saturn's passage through Sag. You can see the dates here, starting middle to end of March and going through middle to or beginning to end of August. Saturn has a 4-month retrograde cycle. And here is the event chart for when Saturn went into Sagittarius on December 23rd of last month. And so you can see, here's the second chart, same chart with all the inner planets taken out. As we are moving through these series, we're going to be concentrating on the major aspects that Saturn will have with the outer planets and that Jupiter has with Saturn. These are a little bit slower moving aspects so that we can have an ability to grasp them over several months or maybe even almost a year as we go through the retrogrades. And so I'll go through these aspects individually, brief little tidbits as best as I can for all of you. Again, just a review here with Saturn in Sag. This is where the structure of consciousness turns philosophical, looks for deeper meaning and understanding to life. We are also looking at a structure of consciousness that is expanding and evolving. That's the mutability of the sign Sagittarius. Standards of right-wrong conduct undergo evolution. We look for truth versus lies in any area of life, especially whatever house Saturn and Sag is transiting through. We have to have a degree of willingness to change with the times. Saturn can get so involved in security that it doesn't like to let go of things. That's that word crystallization that comes along with Saturn. When it's in Sagittarius, there is an easier ability to change with the times if we make the effort. Of course, Saturn in general deals with gender, hormonal, parent-child issues and lessons. And with Sagittarius, sometimes there are lessons of excess, and there are also lessons of loss in order to open up the space that is necessary to evolve into. Excuse me. Oops, apologies for that. I felt a sneeze coming on, so I quickly took my headset off. Saturn in Sag is where we are learning self-responsibility to hopefully balance out some of that Sagittarian excess that we can get involved with sometimes. It also is learning self-determination so that Sag can learn how to focus. Sometimes Sag is very good at having an intent and a focus, and sometimes Sag is all over the place as a mutable modality archetype. And Saturn in Sag, Saturn in any sign is going to bring up an involution where life is no longer working. With Sag, this is going to be in regards to our belief system. It's going to be in regards to how we understand the cosmos and put it together. And all of us through this 3-year transit may go through time periods where our understanding of life and the world and belief structures isn't working. It's reached some type of limitation, and it can go inward on us, meaning nothing makes sense to me anymore. I don't understand this. And that involution turns us inward then to open up for those deeper understandings, to go to that Gemini polarity and show us where we're limited or where we have some weak link in how we put life together. We also are working through insecurities versus the know-it-all bravado that we can sometimes put on with Sag to cover up insecurities in this case. We have integrity principles versus exaggerations. We have authenticity versus compensating. Exaggerating and compensating are both Sagittarian words. And so they're part of that larger picture of becoming honest with oneself versus falling in for the lie or exaggerating whatever's going on, and the story gets bigger and bigger and the fish you caught gets bigger and bigger. Learning to be in integrity versus all over the place. We have alienation lessons that will come with Saturn and Sag, and that sometimes sometimes this tends to happen. Alienation happens when we have to let go of beliefs or our cosmological understandings in some way, and we have to open up to deeper understandings. The alienation lessons can come along as well in the whole world of communication. We have to learn how to speak in such a way that others may actually hear what we are saying and hear or sense the meaning of what we are saying beyond the words. And of course, Saturn in any sign is the evolution of security. And with Sagittarius, this evolution is a Sag word. And so we are all trying to have an evolution of our inner security, because inner is always reflected outer. So I just jotting down a few key words here for us with Saturn and Sag. Here's the aspects that it is making in date order. As you can see, these here are the waning semi-squares with Pluto, waning sesqui-squadrates with Saturn, and then Saturn's going to move into a last quarter square with Neptune. Jupiter is going to have a last quarter square to Saturn. One waning semi-sextile to Pluto. One time Saturn squares the nodes. And then, of course, the trine to Uranus, and Jupiter is making trines to Uranus as well. So they're going to be in the orbs of the fire grand trine while Jupiter is finishing up its transit through Leo. Saturn will make last quarter squares to Chiron, and then, of course, Jupiter will have one waning sextile to Saturn while it is in Sagittarius. Briefly, here is the health and wellness. I won't go through these in any detail this time around. You're going to have this to refer to with your PowerPoint slides after the event. And here is Saturn in Sagittarius. Again, these are possible potential areas where we could see manifestation of imbalances while Saturn is in Sag. Doesn't mean it will happen to each and every one of us, but this will give you a little bit of the ideas to work with from the perspective of health and wellness. Now, and of course, my favorite picture of Saturn that I didn't want to take out of the slideshow, so I thought I'm just going to leave it in there so we can look at it. As we start to look at Saturn in Sagittarius's transit through the 5th house, here's what we are doing with the archetypes. In EA, we will look at the planet and the sign and the house as an interchangeable archetype. And here I've listed the polarity, the modality, and the element for both Saturn and for the archetype of Sagittarius, and then also for the transiting house. Active polarity with the 5th house, the fixed modality, and the element of fire again. So as I had said last month, as we start to look at these aspects, I've created these charts in a very generic perspective. And as we go through this and I use any keywords for you, it also is bullet points. It's very generic. It's going to be different for each person depending upon the state of consciousness within their soul, depending upon the environmental conditionings in their world. Any of these archetypes can be distorted or naturally expressed. So when I come up with these keywords, bullet points, I'm just trying to give examples from both directions, the distortions and then also what we would know as some of the natural expressions. Now, we're using whole houses here so that it will put Saturn in whatever house we're working with, and it means that all the rest of the planets will line up in whole houses as well. Again, you see the 0 degrees right here. I just picked dates out of the heavens. I picked early March for the first charts that I'm going to go through with Saturn waning semi-square Pluto, waning sesqui-squadrate to Uranus, and then the grand fire trine with Jupiter, as you can see right here. So you see that we're going to have this grand fire trine is in fire signs and fire houses when we look at this transiting Saturn through the 5th house. All right. And I did bring in a second chart for the class, as my idea said last week, and so I'll go through that with all of you as well. When we are working with Saturn and Sag, okay, I'm getting technical difficulties. I'm saying that I may have difficulties. Can you hear me okay, Leroy? All right, Leroy, are you on the line? Can
yes,
everybody hear me okay?
I was hearing you just fine.
Okay.
And it sounds good to Sean. It sounds good to Robin. So I think it's just, making sure you're closed out of your other apps, etc.
I'm closed out of all other, I'm closed out of all my other apps. Perhaps you might want to check with our young adult and make sure that he didn't forget and accidentally get on the internet. If you would, please. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so I think we're going okay. It was just a little sign that bounced up on my screen, and I wanted to make sure that I was being heard. So again, this is all very generic bullet points. So you're going to take a lot of these keywords and you're going to address them if you work with clients where it relates in their own individual chart and their own environmental conditionings. When we start looking at Saturn and Sag transiting through the 5th house, one of the best potentials is creative inspiration. Sag, fifth house, double fire sign. They can just feel all kinds of new creativity coming through. They could have intuitive hits on creativity that they would then want to follow through on. They could also have those creative hits via the 11th house polarity of understanding the larger role that any creativity can play in society and in meeting the needs of any society that they might be participating in. Honey, Leroy, can you mute yourself? Thank you, honey. And so throughout this transit then, there's going to be an evolution of creativity in all kinds of ways. For someone, it might be a child. For another person, it could be a new job. Someone else may take some interest in art and decide to do something with it. You know, the creativity is a generic word and it can have an expression in all kinds of ways. One of the distortions you might want to worry about here is being overly egotistical, being overly confident. That fire energy is, you know, that sense of special destiny, Jeffrey Green would always say. And so they may go overboard with that creativity. And when that's the case, there might be some readjustments to, again, make sure that the creative ventures are matching something that society needs. There could easily be a revisiting of issues around the childhood of the soul in question, looking at their own childhood with as honest as possible perspective, getting out of the immediacy of the fifth house ego and looking at it from a detached perspective so that they can have deeper understandings about how their childhood affects them today. There can be lessons with children. Having children, you know, something going on with the children in the life, you know, perhaps they have a young one that is, you know, reaching that first Saturn square, and the child is having to learn issues with truth versus honesty. Can be all over the place, but children will come into that picture somehow in many regards, and just revisiting the childhood and taking a very honest look at it. Now, Pluto in Capricorn, it puts that in the 6th house. There will be a double Earth signature going on there. And so one of the things that they're having to learn how to do with the Saturn 5th house transit is how to be of service to the larger whole. How to be in touch with what is real in regards to work and career on a daily basis. Again, if that 5th house Saturn transit gets too egotistical, there may need to be a Pluto in Cap reality check of what's possible and what is not possible for them to do. Pluto in Capricorn through that 6th house, it might possibly bring up issues around healthcare. And again, this Saturn transit, they may feel bigger than life. All the fire archetypes can feel that. And they can have a sensing that, you know, everything's fine. I'm never going to grow old. I'm never going to get sick. And perhaps they have some little crises or health scare to just get them a little bit more in touch with being real and the fact that all of us are mortals here on planet Earth, and it will, you know, sooner or later come to an end with this body we all inhabit. Pluto in Cap is just, I mean, it is in the 6th house. It's a long lesson in self-improvement. And Saturn in Sag through the 5th is going to have to surrender to that in some way. Now, the waning sesquisquadrate to Uranus, we have Uranus over here. Whoops, get my mouse working again. We'll have the waning sesquisquadrates to Uranus south node. Uranus would be over here in the 9th house, the natural house of Sagittarius. So it's going to bring in some real honesty lessons with self, 5th house, and with others that we're moving through relationships with. There could be a little bit of perhaps selfishness that could possibly go on, and that's going to have to be toned down in some way. Yes, Uranus in Aries with the south node, we're all invested in ourselves. But if we go overboard with that, and with this 5th house transit possibility, it's going to have to be addressed. It's going to have to be adjusted in some way. We don't operate in vacuums. And so this is where perhaps some of these alienation lessons might come in to actually help someone move beyond any limitations or move beyond any distortions of selfishness. These aspects with Saturn to Uranus could also bring in the possibility of some type of confrontations around any limitations with belief systems, and also the need to be able to break free and really get in touch with your one's own personal beliefs, rather than going along with what the societal standards or their conditionings have been. There could be some real breakthroughs in regards to belief systems with these Uranus Aries aspects. Now, this grand trine in fire, there could be just a strong creative dynamo taking place here, especially, again, if you look at as Uranus is in the 9th house, Jupiter is here in the 1st. This is the grand trine that I'm talking about. If they're opening up on intuitive levels with this right here and receiving the inspiration, there's a lot of creativity with this double fire signature. They want to be really listening on deeper levels, honoring that intuition, because that's what's going to be the vehicle to inspire them, to give them the creative ideas of what they're going to let loose with. You could see someone aspiring to be the teacher, speaker, writer, healer with this grand trine in fire. The extremes, they could go overboard. Double fire signature. There could be an exaggeration of what they actually have the ability to do. And they're going to have to really look at any illusions of grandeur in regards to themselves. And again, illusions of grandeur can come from the fire archetypes in going overboard. And if you look at this particular segment, we have Sagittarius, we have 9th house, and we have Jupiter all in this grand trine. So this Saturn house transit, we can have all of the extremes of that archetype, Jupiter, Sag, 9th. We can also have all of its potential best expressions going on as well. Divinely inspired or going overboard. Now, here I've taken the chart, and we're still working with Saturn in the 5th house, but I brought it into June of 2016. So you can see the nodes shifting into Virgo Pisces. You can see Jupiter in Virgo, and I just picked a date out of the hat. I thought, oh, let's just try the summer solstice. And lo and behold, I didn't realize, they're all within orb of doing this T-square, and Saturn's within orb of squaring the nodes here. I'm sure this is going to go in and out of it several times with the retrogrades of these three planets as they, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, as they take place. But allow me to just show you this in the visual, which I didn't have in last week's class. And so as we look at the Neptune Chiron last quarter squares, again, you can see we'll have Neptune Chiron here in the 8th, Pisces, Jupiter, Virgo, 2nd. As we look at these last quarter squares, there's going to have to be an honesty with commitments and intimacy. They're going to have to let go of old illusions around their relationship. And they're also wanting to let go of old wounds in intimacy. So Saturn, Sag, 5th house, being honest with oneself around the whole area of love. Self-love, love with others. And then again, letting go of these wounds, working to heal them, letting go of old relating illusions. Now, it is possible with this Chiron Neptune in the 8th house, it is possible there could be the love triangles. It's also possible that the relationship could reach the end of the path. There could be some relationship endings, and that also could be a very strong disillusionment signal. I thought we were married. I thought we were in a commitment, and poof, partner's gone. Partner wants out. And so there could be the danger of re-imprinting woundedness around intimacy. It's going to be very important for that self-love to be here with these last quarter squares. Jupiter is going to be over there in Virgo in the 2nd house, and it's going to have to work around healing with resources and self-reliance. There's going to be a need to have honesty in regards to values and recognizing that we are more than our stuff. We're more than the material goods. It will ask us to, let go of self-criticism, Jupiter to Saturn. And perhaps there's going to be, as we're working to evolve, valuing ourselves, we want to change any inner critical self-talk to gentle talk, to self-support talk. I'm doing the best I can do. I always do the best I can do. I'm not perfect, but I'm really making an effort to be as honest and loving with myself as I can possibly be. And every day I'll be a little better. And I am really working to find inner security, 2nd house, over thinking that I'm secure when I have X amount of dollars in the bank or, XYZ material goods around me. There's going to be that recognizing that we are more than our stuff with this last quarter square. Now Saturn will be squaring the nodes. It will only happen one time in the latter part of 2016. Whoops, I didn't realize I touched my mouse again. But you can see right here, even in June, Saturn is within orbs of being square. So all the way through next year, 2016, through the middle of it into the fall, there will probably be a good 6, 7, 8 month time period where Saturn will be within orb of squaring these nodes. We're going to have to learn healthy giving and receiving in love. 5th to 2nd and 8th. Distortions, we could skip back and forth between isolation and being overly possessive and controlling. And when we walk through these distortions, this means that self-reliance, Jupiter or North Node 2nd house, and that inner security, Saturn, is missing in some way. And we're going to have to be reaching to heal this and move beyond it. And essentially, what we're going to want is to have, healthy boundaries in intimacy, healthy giving and receiving. And we're going to be working upon, a real potential here is working towards really improving and evolving self-reliance to such a degree that with this Saturn square the nodes, there's a metamorphosis in our own energy and therefore who we attract in on an intimate level as well. When we deeply love ourselves with this transit, we're not going to settle for the relationship games and neglect from the South Node in Pisces and these planets here in Pisces. So we'll have those areas of insecurities. We can have the lies. We can have all of the differences in values in intimate relationships around resources, resource values. All of these things, we can see where that's all needing to evolve, or that's all needing to go to the next level. And again, because we're talking about fixed houses here, there might be a tendency to want to stay stuck in the rut. And when that is if that's the case, then there can definitely be confrontations or metamorphic events that shift all that fixed energy. And Saturn and Sag will be making sense of it in regards to oneself. All right. Let me check my time here and see if I'm going. Yeah, I think I'm doing okay here. Questions with anything that I'm saying? Is there anything that I did not speak about that you want me to address? Questions or comments from anybody?
Nope. It's all pretty clear on the board, Kim.
All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. So let's move on then to Saturn and Sag transiting through the 6th house. As you can see here, this is an interchangeable archetype with Mercury and Virgo. We're moving into the passive polarity again. We are mutable modality, and here is one of the earth element houses. And so here's your first chart where you can see here Saturn in the 6th, going to be making the waning semi-square to Pluto Cap in the 7th. It's going to be making the waning sesquisquadrate to Uranus in Aries up here in the 10th. And of course, the grand trine in fire is in earth houses. And so this transit is going to be rebirthing our self-healing abilities, finding the healer within ourselves, honoring our intuition around any areas of health and wellness. With this transit, if you get your intuitive hit that, I should go check out XYZ in regards to my health, follow that, honor that intuition, honor that ability to heal. If you get the intuitive hits that you need to evolve or change your exercise program or do something different or add something on, you're going to want to, again, listen to the intuition there. There's going to be a need to have honesty around work and the work routine, what's possible to do, what's not possible to do. This Saturn transit could, excuse me, sometimes go into a little bit of workaholism, could go into some of the worry wart, and Sag could just exacerbate that. Again, if a little's good, more is better. Sag can expand that with any of the distortions as well as the natural expressions. And so we're going to want to have some balance in routine. We're going to want to have balance around, the whole work issue. And again, diet, exercise, and rest all belong in that sixth house generically. And this Saturn transit is going to have to address that and evolve it and get real. I mean, it could be that, Sag could be going off all over the place and never take time to exercise. And this Saturn transit is going to say, hey, okay, I got to pay attention to this little temple my soul's residing in. And I think that this is going to be a need to reach deeper understandings about the everyday world. Finding that inner peace with all the details that exist in our westernized world. Sixth house, there can just be overwhelmed from time to time with everything that has to be done or needs to be done. And so sometimes this Saturn transit's going to need that, walk outdoors or going to the mountaintop to balance all of the busyness that can come with sixth house. I think that there needs to be an honesty with self-love here too, because that sixth house, again, this the inner side of Mercury, we can either be inwardly critical, then outwardly critical, or we can make that effort to see our cup half full. Transition into the attitude of gratitude and what am I grateful for in my world to help calm down a lot of, again, all that busyness that can come with this house transit. Now in the waning semi-square with Pluto in Capricorn, that's in the 7th house, there is opportunity for healing in relationships, old relationships, familiar relationships, opportunity for healing with children, Capricorn, Cancer, polarity to Capricorn. There's going to be a need to have relationship honesty, maturation in relationships. In other words, Pluto Cap 7th, there has to be an equality. There has to be that equal giving and receiving in the relationship roles for those that are in relationships. There has to be an ability to listen on some of the deeper levels, Pluto in the 7th house. And with Cap, what can happen is there can be a shutdown sometimes in that ability to listen. And so, especially if one gets triggered. So there needs to be, again, there's going to have to be an effort to hear and to hear the deeper meanings that are being expressed. That's the waning semi-square. Possibility of letting go of judgments in relationships as well. That could be taking place. And that old judge less, discern more could be part of this aspect between Saturn and Pluto. With Uranus in Aries, Uranus is going to be in that 10th house. There could be some old career traumas that might surface that we're going to have to make an effort healing those old patterns. We could have new career ideas come through, new inspiration. We're going to have to look at the ways in which we need to take charge of our life. That is Uranus in the 10th house. And so perhaps there's something new coming along in the physical level with the whole diet, exercise, and rest. And we have to find the willpower with Uranus in the 10th to change whatever needs to be changed. And doing the same thing, not just on a physical level, but perhaps on mental levels as well, with Saturn in that 6th house. We've got, even though it's a waning sesquisquadrate, waning square and a half, we're still dealing with the archetype of the 6th and the 10th house. So work and career, all that stuff, any area that's distorted needs to be healed. And then as we're healing it, how do we move it through into inspiration? How do we take our work and career to the next level? Now, the grand trine in fire, again, 3 fire signs and 3 earth houses. And so we could have issues with resources. We could see resources just good resource management, resource gifts coming through, being able to really make progress in work and career, feeling valuable around what we do. We could make a lot of headway in building resources. We could have the distortions of that. If that grand trine in fire gets into going overboard and excess, we could overspend. We could not pay attention to the pocketbook. We could not pay attention to our resources. It's possible we could have the distortions of resource losses if we're going to excess or overdoing. So you can see all around the area of resources and work and career, we could have possible lessons if it's distorted. And if we're learning those lessons, then again, we take the ability to be at peace with our resources to new levels. And we could really be of service in helping others build resources, learning to serve and lead in new ways around the whole issue of resources. Here we are with that June 2016 date again, and when transiting Saturn is in Sag going through the 6th house, it's going to make last quarter squares to Chiron, Neptune in the 9th. Jupiter's going to make a last quarter square from the 3rd to the 6th. And of course it puts the nodes in the 3rd, 9th with the Saturn square to the nodes that goes on. And so what we've got going on here, if you will look at this transit, is we have mutable signs and we have mutable houses here. All right? And so the last quarter squares with Chiron and Neptune. Self-honesty or buying into illusions, old sadomasochistic wounds coming to the surface, and we have to be careful of re-imprinting them, re-imprinting old distorted beliefs about ourself, or working to heal any of those old sadomasochistic wounds. There's the potential to have a rebirthing of our ability to be a healer with ourself. There is also that potential to be opening up to becoming the healer again, to be the teacher, to be the shaman. There's definitely a need to open up the belief systems, to deepen the belief systems, Pisces, 9th house, and to really let go of old judgments and old beliefs about self that have to do with the whole lack. Again, the Saturn last quarter square to Chiron and Neptune here, all right? And of course, as we all know from the archetype of Sagittarius in EA, it relates to what we call natural laws and principles. And here's the Neptune Pisces in the ninth house. This is going to be really opening up to walk the talk of natural law here. Jupiter's last quarter squares, communication lessons have come to the surface. Letting go of old self-talk again, that inner criticism, that always looking at what's lacking within self. And this can also apply to communications with others as well. Inner outer criticism, seeing what's lacking or wrong with everything in the day-to-day of the world. What we have here with this Jupiter Saturn last quarter square is both of the Mercury houses. So yes, the emphasis on the communication and changing that communication inwardly and outwardly. Letting go of all kinds of old communicating patterns and opening up to healthier ones. We are going to both the Saturn squares to Neptune, Chiron, and Jupiter's to Saturn. All of these squares are really going to be asking us to let go. They're last quarter squares, crises in consciousness. We have to let go of the busybodiness of the left brain and take the time to hear right brain, to really let the intuition open up, to really, look at things from deeper perspectives versus the distortion of being the worrywart and having the nervous system go overboard and, just running around with too much detail and not paying attention. If we look at the, here it is. I said it here. Yeah. Intuition breakthroughs are that circular thinking, going round and round and round and round, worry, 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 worry. And we've just got to find that way to let the intuition through, to relax into inner peace, to breathe into inner peace, and the healing effect that can have on oneself with the 6th house transit of Saturn in Sag. Now Saturn square the nodes, again, we're going to have to be careful of brain switching. Left brain, right brain, left brain, right brain, left brain, right brain. Worrying about all the details rather than allowing the right brain to ponder an issue and naturally bring through the essence of the answer and then allowing the details to fill in. There will be the communication lessons through all of these squares here. And running around or inner peace. This Saturn square the nodes, we're going to have to accept the limits of what can be healed this time around. What we can heal and what we possibly can't heal. It can even be what we could heal through all of our alternative methods and where the limits of that are and where we will have to blend or merge with perhaps more traditional healing methods. With Saturn, this could be someone who, what's the typical thing that's happening nowadays with baby boomers? Knee replacements, hip replacements, pacemakers, stents in your heart. And again, so my point is that understanding the limits of what we can heal on an alternative way and where we may need to bring in the traditional. That could easily come through this Saturn house transit. And of course, we want to have honesty in all areas of life. We want to have honesty with ourselves and with our others. We want to walk our talk, and we want our talk to be as honest as possible. All right, so anything you can think of that I might be down, that I might have missed or not spoken about with this Saturn transit?
I think
A
Robin
lot of
had a
these
very
aspects are going to be one. Go ahead. Go ahead.
well. Robin had a nice comment that came in through the Q&A board. Take time to reflect about our natural essence. Natural essence, Saturn, Sag, sixth house.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And to be of service to self and others, to just be real with oneself, as honest as possible with self and others. To trust the process of life versus perhaps that sixth house worrywart and trying to handle all the details.
And be willing to take off the masks that we wear. I got transiting Saturn in Sag here through my sixth house for the next 3 years. So I get to learn a lot about this one. And I think about, how many masks that we tend to wear, on a daily basis, how we want to present ourselves to our teenage kids or our mate or our colleagues or our golfing buddies at the golf course.
I'm thinking the same thing. We had 65 degrees here in the northern plains, everybody, and it was like, go Leroy, go to the golf course. And he comes home, he says, well, I golfed with the minister from Lead. Leroy just, he's one who just goes on the golf course, and whoever, he doesn't always need a partner. And I'm like, did he want to know what you did for a living, honey? And then, of course, sometimes there's this is a good point. There's that whole essence of honesty. And so when you know you're having a conversation with someone who is consensus, can you adjust your language to, in essence, have a real honest conversation with them, and yet not going overboard? I mean, there are times when people ask me what I do, and I say I'm a counselor. And I'm not ashamed of the astrology, the opposite. But I'm in that consensus world, and it's just a simpler conversation to just go, well, I'm in the counseling business, and leave it at that. So, honesty isn't always black and white, and I'm one of those absolute honesty, but I'm also one that doesn't have to go pick a fight with the stranger on the street either.
Yeah, to be fair to our minister from Lead, South Dakota, yes, he did ask me what we did, and of course, our elevator talk is basically, we're educational materials on the internet, because he denoted that he was kind of a conservative Methodist minister from Lead, South Dakota. I just chose not to broach the subject of astrology or energetic balancing, for gosh sakes.
Yeah.
And yet, that was enough. Oh, that's great. That has to be really good. Yeah, I work out of the house with my wife and blah 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 blah. And yet, I'd be very willing, Saturn and Sag through my sixth house, to have that conversation with him around the table with a cold beer or something. But it just isn't the right time for that in between the good shots and the bad shots on the golf course. So you just kind of, but being in integrity with who you are, where you are, wherever you're at, I think is an important part of what you're talking about here, Saturn and Sag to the sixth.
Yeah. That whole, essence of honesty. All right, moving along here. Saturn in Sagittarius, when it's transiting through the 7th house, it brings in this interchangeable archetype with Venus in Libra. Here we've got the active polarity, we have the cardinal modality, and we have the element of air. And so as we look at the first chart here, Saturn in the 7th, the waning semi-squares with Pluto Cap are in the 8th house. The waning sesquisquadrates with Uranus and Aries are in the 11th. And the grand trine in fire is in air houses as we look at this one. And so what we're looking at here with this Saturn transit in the 7th house is the ability to be honest with ourselves and others. That 7th house can so many times be a chameleon. And one of the distortions of Sag is compensation. And so there is the need to be careful around taking on roles in order to be liked or loved, or, dealing with what people expect you to be rather than who you really are. And so this is getting to an essence of being our real self, being honest with who we are, and then being that with others. There, sometimes, again, this can also be the social butterfly who just, sag all over the place, lack of focus, just here, the mutability that's here and there and everywhere, and just going through, relationships on a surface level, and that need to, be real in relationships. Learning to really listen to what someone else is saying. And in the same respect, having others really hear you. So there will almost always be some type of communication lessons that will come along with this house transit. And we also would want to be looking for deeper values in relationships. Again, not the Libra fluff on the surface. That Sagittarian honesty wants to go for what's real and honest in relationships. What do I value in a relationship? And hopefully there is this deepening value system around honesty, around being who we really are, around the maturation process in relationships, Saturn through the 7th, versus falling into the 7th house codependencies that could be coming along. You add on that waning semi-square to Pluto Cap in the 8th house, and there could very possibly be some confrontations in order to be honest, be real, mature in these in any intimacy relationships. Both partners needing to grow up, but especially the one who has the 7th house Saturn transit. Where's the next level of maturation? We could possibly, have some over responsibility going on, and there's a need to confront the partner to take on a more equal role. We could be avoiding responsibility. Sag, I'm just into the lightheartedness of the relationship, and I'm not going to stick around when it gets hard or heavy, or we have to get real, or I have to grow up and take on responsibilities. And so where are we having to confront any relationship inequalities? There is a possibility that some relationships could have reached the end of the road, that the Saturn and Sag person wants freedom, Sag, from a relationship. They're finished, they're done. The partner could be saying this to the Saturn and Sag person. It's not it's not always a given, but it could be there for some people with this Saturn transit. And if their relationship is coming to a closure, an ending, how honest can we be with each other about what is no longer working? I have that little cliche, your hellos are only as good as your goodbyes. So how can you go through being real if there is an ending? How can you go through that maturation process of not blaming the other person? And if there's limitations in the relationship, how are you facing them? How are you working to heal them? There'll definitely be relationship stuff going on here with this Saturn-Pluto aspect and the maturation of intimacy in relationships. Now, Uranus in Aries is going to be over there in the 11th house, and so it's quite possible that there are old relationship traumas that could be surfacing that one would want to heal. There could be possible isolation or alienation lessons so that we could learn deeper meanings and values in relationships, so that we could learn better communication lessons in relationship, so that we can learn to be who we really are versus what we've been conditioned to be by society, or we've been conditioned to be by our partnerships. We need to have that freedom to be ourselves. And we will need to give others the freedom to be who they essentially are. Versus, again, all the 7th house chameleon and game playing. Now that grand trine in fire, it's in air houses. So the communications are going to be emphasized with this Saturn house transit. And we're going to have honesty in communications. You know, sometimes you'll run into that 7th house or Libra energy where someone talks a lot but they don't say anything. That can also happen with Gemini 3rd. With any of the air houses, perhaps. So are we just going to, again, run words that don't mean anything? Or are we going to learn how to have some real conversations, honest conversations? And this grand trine in fire will definitely be inspiring on a mental level. We could really get some future-orientated messages about ourselves and where we are needing to break free from the past and break free from old traumas and conditionings. We could get some real intuitive and inspiring hits in regards to relationships and what needs to evolve or heal with them. This could be another, strong creativity trine with that air. You would want to really work with that element of repetition if you're getting the future-orientated messages, because you could possibly distort into running a lot of fantasy projections. And so again, with the future-orientatedness of the archetype of Uranus, and Uranus is in its own house of rulership, the 11th house, the future-orientated messages that come of their own volition, you pay attention to the element of repetition, and the more it comes up into consciousness all on its own again and again and again, that's your own soul speaking to you. And that's how you get past some of the mental fluff or projections or fantasies in uh, some of the ways you want to move forward that might not be in your highest and best interest. Now, here's where this 7th house Saturn transit is with last quarter squares to Neptune and Chiron. They're in the 10th. Jupiter's last quarter square to Saturn. Jupiter's in the 4th. And you can see then when the nodes move into Virgo, Pisces with this house transit, they'll be in the 4th and 10th. And so those last quarter squares are all going to start to bring in familial wounds of some sort to heal, perhaps around a father or the authoritarian parent. There may be crises around feeling that we've been sacrificing ourselves for family or career, and it's not working to do it that way anymore. We have to have a balance between family and career. We have to have a balance between a home life and a career life. There may be some honesty issues over the roles we have with others. We have Neptune and Chiron, Pisces, 10th house. There could be career letdowns of some sort if we're too associated with career as a sense of status. There could be a disillusionment around that, so that we get a deeper sense of who we really are, versus we are more than our career. Just like we are more than our stuff, we're more than our position in society. And so there's going to have to be rebirthing of our work roles, our positions in society, what work means to us on deeper levels. There could be the possibility where, someone gets passed over and the coworker gets the advancement position. There could be some work-related issues around work-related relationships. Not getting along with our coworkers, having something come up with them, finding out a coworker perhaps wasn't being honest with you. They were running an end game around you to get that coveted promotion or whatever. There could be all kinds of things that could come through in the whole work arena here, and in disillusionment around work and how it affects your relationships, and healing that in whatever ways are necessary. Jupiter's going to be down there in Virgo in the 4th house, making the last quarter square to Saturn in the 7th. So there could be some early environmental wounds, early nurturing wounds that we're going to have to look at and heal. Again, we could feel like we are sacrificing ourselves in our relationships, and it's possible that can lead to anger with others, or it comes to a head and we've got to re-examine relationship roles with family and the home environment in some way. We really have to make efforts to honor how others feel with this aspect, honoring our own emotions, working to heal those emotions, and honoring other people's feelings as well, as best as we can, without sacrificing ourselves or violating our own values in relationships. It's quite possible with these last quarter squares there could be some gender issues that may surface. Somebody realizing that they're more naturally orientated to the opposite gender, or you could have that extreme where you're in a relationship and your partner comes in to tell you that they've realized they're gay. I think that'll be a more rarity, but that could be a possibility with these transiting houses. There could be the hormonal issues that could come up from a health perspective, Jupiter in Virgo. We might bring in different types of relationship upsets between home, partner, career. Everything can feel like it's all of them are up in the air, and there just has to be a real honest look at all of these different relationships we have and our relationship roles and how we want to be in relationships with others in our world. It's also quite possible the partner could come at us with that, transiting Saturn in the 7th. It could be the partner that's coming forward with us and saying, these roles in our relationship aren't working for me anymore. I need to have things different. I need to have things changing. The whole ability to really listen to others, having others listening to you, with Jupiter in the 4th, Chiron, Neptune in the 10th, we may find, again, family of origin, home environment, work, boss, co-workers, employees. We might find that the whole communication and honesty issues perhaps weren't there when we thought they were there. And can we communicate and address any of these situations and lessons as they come up for us? Now Saturn here, square the nodes in North Node Virgo 4th, South Node Pisces 10th. There is the possibility of the distortions between immaturity and over-responsibility, where we, again, take on too much. Take on responsibility for the partner when perhaps we shouldn't. We could have our own areas where we refuse to be responsible and we are perhaps immature, and they could bounce back and forth. And again, Saturn square the nodes in these houses. There could be gender confusion. There could be gender clarity. And it doesn't always have to involve the whole homosexuality issue. We might be evolving the type of partner that we're attracted to. Maybe, a female's attracted to a male, but instead of attracted to the suit and tie guy in the corporate world, her relationship values are changing to someone who lives a little bit more naturally. You could, just relationship values could start to change, and we have to, and it could feel like there could also be Saturn square the nodes here. There could be some stress between feeling like one is having to juggle home and career all the time and feeling bounced back and forth by it all and no sense of time for self. In essence, what we're really going to want to work for with Saturn square the nodes in these signs and houses is to just, again, that whole honesty issue, being real with another, being real with other family members, being real in the work environment, creating new levels of equality at home, new levels of equality in the work environment, new levels of equality in the intimate relationships. These are not meant to be exhaustive lists. These are more as you are probably perhaps getting the flow of it. This is, bullet points that can be jump starting for you in where to take it to the next level if you're working with any of these specific aspects. Anything that I've not addressed with this house transit that you'd like me to comment on? Questions, comments, anything? All right. Being a little quiet, so all must be well.
All is well. I think you can safely go on to 7th or 8th house, right?
8th house, yeah. Here we're looking at Saturn and Sag now, making a transit through the 8th house. This is going to be interchangeable with Pluto Scorpio archetype. We're moving to the passive polarity. Excuse me. We're moving to the fixed modality, and we're moving to the element of a water house. And so here is the first visual for you. Here's Saturn in the 8th. The waning semi-squares are going to come from Pluto Cap in the 9th. The waning sesquisquadrates are going to have Uranus in Aries in the 12th. And here we're going to have the grand trine in fire in water houses. So this grand trine here is going to be combining fire and water and that famous steam that we get. When you're looking at this Saturn transit, you're going to need to have honesty in intimacy. So this is going to ask that we are real and honest with our committed partner if we're in that type of a relationship. If we're not in relationship, we're going to have to be honest about what's important to us in intimacy. And so there can be a rebirthing of our values around shared resources, our values around sexuality, our values around intimacy. How is this changing and evolving? How are we looking for deeper values? Is perhaps the emotional intimacy, is that a value that is as important or even more important than, say, sex? Or vice versa? Can someone, for one person, perhaps having a very active sexual relationship is an important value to them. Can they bring it up if they're in relationship with the partner and share it and discuss it? Can there be changes? One of the things that can happen, of course, with this Saturn transit is confrontations wherever there's a perception of limitation. Saturn. Sag doesn't like limitations. It wants that sense of freedom and movement. And so confrontations in intimate relationships can take place here. And the whole purpose of the confrontation is to open up to honesty, to open up to get real. There could be the possibility, again, that a relationship has reached the end of the road. Someone wants their freedom. And can we have, an honest, honoring letting go, the conscious uncoupling that, what's her name? The actress made, Gwyneth Paltrow made popular this summer.
And the Coldplay guy.
But the opposite of that, yes? Did you just mute
Well,
yourself, honey?
you said Paltrow, but I wanted to give equal time to Chris Martin of Coldplay.
All right. Good job.
That was conscious uncoupling, correct? So
I think it was conscious uncoupling.
yeah, so both people had to be involved. So it was Chris Martin and Gwyneth Paltrow. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, we can have the opposite of that. Instead of a relationship perhaps coming to the end of the line, we could have a spiritualization process to intimacy with the Saturn Sag 8th house transit. They could be rebirthing a sense of commitment with each other and seeing the relationship go to, deeper levels on a spiritual basis. Really honoring the divine in the partner could come here. There could be a sense of intuitive hits when partner's being dishonest, or if there is any game playing, love affairs going on. There could be some strong intuitive hits that come through around all kinds of intimacy issues. And do you just brush them off, Sag, ignore them, or do you honor them and pay attention to them? I'd suggest the latter. Pay attention if you get that intuitive hit that partner might be cheating on you, or you have a client that comes through and says that with this house transit. I just don't feel that he's being honest with me. Well, what is your intuition telling you? And then support them in honoring that. Pluto in Cap, that waning semi-square, is Saturn's going to be in Sag and Pluto's in the 9th house. So it's going to emphasize all of those archetypes, all the honesty issues, confrontations, being able to let go of what is no longer supporting a relationship with you if you're in one, or what's no values, if those aren't, limited, let them go. There could be confrontations around a difference in belief systems if you're in relationships. And can you find the common ground? Can you agree to disagree? Do the values conflict enough that it's hard to even have a support of the relationship? Is there enough common ground that can be the change? Pluto in Capricorn in the 9th could desire freedom as well. I want to take charge of my own life. I want to be free to just be responsible for myself and not have to take on my relationship roles anymore. Of course, we could have the whole career evolving here. Someone wanting to become the teacher, find some spiritual role. And what effect is that having on intimacy if they're in relationship? What if someone wants to go back to school and they're in relationship and, they want to quit their job and go back to school? That's going to have a big effect on resources in the relationship. You're going to have the whole desire nature evaluated. Saturn's in the 8th, Pluto in the 9th. What's important to me? What's important in my life? What's important for me in my relationship? What do I really want and desire? What makes sense for me? there could be a real spiritualization process going on here, and someone could want to commit themselves to their spiritual growth over the intimate relationship. Again, I'm just coming up with different kinds of possibilities. It's this Saturn-Pluto aspect is going to revolve around facing the limitations and what needs to let go. What do you need to let go of, and what will it be replaced with? With Uranus, we're going to have Uranus in Aries is going to be in the 12th house. And so it's quite possible that there could be old wounding around intimacy and it's resurfacing. There could be wounding around belief systems, disillusionment around beliefs, perhaps beliefs about relationships. And so what's coming to the surface would be the thing with Uranus in Aries in the 12th house. What is busting through to the surface? And that is what needs to be addressed. And breaking free from those old wounding patterns, breaking free from old beliefs of all kinds, and especially beliefs in relationships. Breaking free from a sense of disillusionment with ourself and how we're in relationship to others. Resources, shared resources. There can be things that have been below the surface or unconscious for a long period of time, or perhaps the length of the entire relationship. And with this Uranus transit, all of a sudden, here's stuff coming up that we never had to address before in the relationship. And how are we going to look at it? There can be Uranus in Aries in the 12th house. There can be a sense of who am I? And wanting to find out who I am beyond my relationships. Saturn transit in the 8th. Now, the grand trine in fire signs here is in water. And so the emotions are going to interplay with all of that fiery energy. And so there's going to be a need to honor the emotions as they ebb and flow, to honor all those feelings. There'll be deep emotions surfacing that we want to be real and honest about, and not just brush over them or run over them or ignore them. We're going to have to be careful in some situations of running away from the emotions, running away from emotional intimacy. The thing about the grand trine in fire is it can really be in the moment, and it can be really excited about something and get the emotions all juiced up, and then the fire goes out and they're gone. And so where is the balancing of the emotions as things get stirred up and then doused out? So in essence, again, honoring all of the emotions that are ebbing and flowing as fire stirs things up, and being as emotionally real and honest as possible with self and with others. Now here is the 2016 chart where Saturn transiting the 8th house is having the last quarter squares to Neptune, Chiron, Pisces in the 11th. Jupiter and Virgo's over here in the 5th, making the last quarter squares to Saturn. And of course, North Node Virgo 5th, South Node Virgo Pisces, as Saturn has the square to the nodes. The last quarter squares with Chiron and Neptune, we're going to have to be careful of emotional traumas being re-imprinted. Emotional traumas coming back up to the surface. Emotional traumas coming through again. The purpose of the repetition of the emotional traumas is to try and make us conscious and break the pattern, to heal it, to release the trauma. And so again, we run the danger of the distortions of just re-imprinting the traumas again, especially if it will involve any intimacy issues with Saturn in the 8th, for instance, love affairs or a relationship ending, or the partner loses their job. And all of a sudden, how are we going to keep the house if we can't make the mortgage payment? So some of these emotional traumas are going to be around intimacy. And there can be minor events. There can be minor traumas. And with this Chiron Neptune signature, there can just be blown out of proportion, okay? Somebody, let's just look at the whole relationship thing again. Partner didn't lose his job, but his hours got cut from 40 to 30 hours. Well, that's going to squeeze, but you're going to be okay. But it can be an overreaction, and what will be happening is there will be unconscious past life trauma that's being re-triggered. And of course, as we look at the nodes going through Virgo Pisces, all of the old sadomasochistic woundedness is going to be coming up. This is also true with Neptune, Chiron in Pisces. And so can we use these quote-unquote wake-up calls to deepen intimacy? Can we address any disillusionment around intimacy? This Neptune, Chiron, and Pisces transit could, in the 11th house, could easily be a PTSD signature. And so how are we confronting that and healing it? Or are we just going to sink into the distortions of the wound and the trauma and, circulate PTSD again and again and again? So there's a chance of, extremes of wounding here being re-imprinted or imprinted, but there also is the potential to have extremes of healing. When that fixed energy has a breakthrough, it can make metamorphic leaps. And so last quarter squares, it really is about understanding this stuff as deeply as possible and then working to address it. Now Jupiter in Virgo is going to be moving through the 5th house, and that is going to make last quarter squares to Saturn in the 8th. So there can be healing around creativity, Virgo 5th, opening up to that. There can be a deepening of self-love, and then intimacy with another. Or there could be another recognition of, I want my freedom, or I want things to change. I want to have more mutual healing in the relationship. There's going to be a need to, again, Saturn's transiting 8th house, emotional honesty. Jupiter, Virgo, careful of the excuse making. There's going to be the need to have a deepening of self-love. With Jupiter, Virgo, we could get caught up in the distortion of focusing on the lack in relationships. And what we want to do is to shift that into gratitude for the relationship. What are we grateful for in the relationship? And what are we willing to do to improve self and the relationship? I'd say, with these last quarter squares, there can be crises around honesty issues again. It's the mutable quadrant signs, and where we're stuck, where we're needing to make leaps of growth. This Saturn transit from the 8th house, when it's squaring those nodes, we have to watch feeling victimized in relationships. We have to, again, have that deep honesty with our partners so that both people can recognize what needs to be healed in each of them and each be responsible for their own healing. And then how does that have a corresponding effect on healing the relationship?
Are you open to a question?
Sure.
Robin, go ahead, and this is probably a question for this transit here.
Hi, Kim. I was just wondering, given the the tension involved in the square, that you're just talking about now, with Saturn and the Neptune and the Chiron and the Jupiter. I was wondering what you thought about the idea of perhaps during this time period bringing in a new relationship, with the idea of the 5th and 11th, of course, the 5th house being love affairs, the 11th house, just being, the expansion and the vision and the, bringing it to a new level, all these kind of things. Just of course the 8th house, the intimacy, and right. I was just wondering what your thoughts were about that, or is there just too much tension in this for that type of,
No. No.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I definitely think you could also have the possibility of a new relationship. That's a good point, because if you look at traditional astrology, 11th house is friends, 5th house is lovers. And in natural law, friends become lovers and lovers become friends when the intimacy is over. So with this 8th house transit here, and these squares going on right here, coming in as much as old relationships ending. All right, and what we could have here with this Pisces 11th house is there is that possibility to have a deep friendship on spiritual levels, or on, shared value levels, that gets sparked by this Saturn transit. And it's quite possible that the new relationship could be of a very healing nature and sparks a lot of creativity for someone. So it can go both ways. And, this is one of the things we say all the time with evolutionary astrology. You've really got to observe and correlate and address the person where they're at. I mean, I've repeatedly over the years, I'll look at a chart and I think, oh, they're going to come to me and the relationship's going to be on the rocks. And they get here and they go, my relationship is actually absolutely just great. My husband and I have been so much closer than we've ever been, but here's my issue. And, you know, the archetypes will show something else that's going on. So the point is, you have to get what is going on in your life. What are you wanting to address? And, you know, they'll put it out there, and then you'll take the archetypes from there in a way that is relating to their world, and that's helpful to them. So yes, we could definitely have a new relationship sparked, as well as perhaps the older ones ending. And not all old ones will end. You could have this house transit, and you know, they may spark friendship all over again and intimacy. And it's really kind of nice when intimate partners can be friends. Any other questions or comments on this house or any of the material that we were looking at on all 4 houses? Anything that I didn't address? You're welcome to raise your hand to be unmuted or type something in. And of course, my final Saturn and Sag slide.
That's a
We've looked
tongue.
at this one
That's
over
a
the
tongue
last.
twister, isn't it?
It is Saturn and Sag slide. So, what is the deepest, broadest level of truth that I can understand with any one of these house transits? I want to know the truth. I want to know the truth. I want to know the truth. And of course, one of my favorite Louise Hay quotes: "Everything I need to know is revealed to me. And everything I need and desire comes to me in my highest and best time-space sequence." I think that is just the absolute perfect Saturn and Sagittarius quote. It's going to be revealed to me. Highest and best time-space sequence, Saturn. All right, everyone, we're going to have one more class in Saturn and Sag Part 2. Wednesday, we will look at houses 9 through 10. So, last call. Questions or comments on anything? Anybody? And if not, then I bid you all a good night.